Okay, hello. I'm Maggie Williams, as you know, and welcome to this recording on data analysis for the class of user research. I advise you to keep paragraph 4.2 of your book, Research This Is It, next to the recording, and it will make things easy to follow. So, we've been talking about eyes and ears, how to set up your observational research or your interviews, but then the next step is making head or tail of the information that you gathered. How do we do with that? How do we go about it? And what are the best ways of this? So paragraph 4.2, there is a very good description of the right procedure in the book, but there is a very strong focus on textual data, so I will add some information because you might have other data for your research as well. So what is data analysis about? It is really about systematically searching and arranging in your data. Why do you do that? To increase your understanding, to search for patterns, and to find out within those patterns what is important. So, like establishing a hierarchy. Why do we want to do that? Of course, to answer our research questions, but it's very important in the process of data analysis also to get the perspective of the different data where they are, so that you can put them, so you can have a discussion on them, on the validity, on the weight of your research and conclusions. And of course, for us as designers, it is also important that our conclusions make a bridge to design and innovation, so that we translate them into something that is not just a result of our conclusion, but a source of inspiration for our next step in the process. Now, what is the attitude? And it's very important, it also says so in the book, to have an open and unbiased attitude. Of course, we all have our biases. Prejudice is something that you're not aware of. But what is important anyway, to be prepared for new and it might be even opposing insights, things that go against your initial expectations. And a very practical way of developing this attitude is by delaying the interpretation. So we first really deal with the structuring and getting an overview of all the data before we make our interpretation of the data. Principles for how to go about this data analysis, what are elements that should be in there to have a good data analysis, is to compare your things with the literature. If you get certain things, find out if other literature confirms that, it has the same type of conclusions or structuring. Do an alternate data collection and analysis, for example, on a different place or in a different way. Code the data, so make sure that you don't just have the data and then your conclusion, but the step in between. Think and do. Don't just look at your data and have a really good think on them and then go to your conclusions, but help your brain by using memos, tables, maps, physically working with your data. And what is really important is to work structured and systematically, and then not mentioned here, but then to record how you do that. So you have your data. Now there can be very different types of data. You can have video recordings, audio recordings. If you have video and audio recordings, you always transfer them to paper, or well, not to paper, but to your laptop. Make transcripts. You don't just transcribe what has been said, but also take your notes from your observation and interviews about other aspects that are relevant, not besides what was being talked about. But also data can be visual materials such as mood boards, diaries, photos, and also they keep them for structuring. Just in between, behavioral archaeology. Just a quick, it's a bit difficult to do, it's non-interactive, but this picture shows you a field of grass where people have been camping. And if you look at what's going on here, you could try to draw conclusions about behavior of people camping. If you look at this picture, the next picture, you can see the patterns that have been made in the grass. Some patterns are more imprinted than others, which might indicate a longer stay or different type of weather during the stay. And the imprints on the grass have different shapes, and they are located in different areas in the space. Imagine trying to draw conclusions about campers' behavior based on these patterns. You could have both campers and non-campers in your team. And it will be really important to make sure that both of them have a voice in the analysis, because people that have experienced camping might know something about how they choose a spot for their tent or their caravan, what is important in the daily life of a camper, whereas people who have no experience at all, because of their fresh look, might notice different things that are not seen by the camper. So it's really important that if you have people with a certain knowledge in your team, to acknowledge that they have that knowledge and to work with it, but also to give space for the analysis of the people that have a fresh mind. And then you can balance those inputs. So what is the procedure that you go through with your data? Well, there's 3 steps, and it's really important to take those 3 steps one after the other, sequentially, and don't go make a kind of circular process out of it, or organic process as some students follow. First step is data preparation. The second step is organizing and structure your data, which is guided by your research question, and it can be that based on that you have to get new data, so then you go back to step 1 and step 2, and then in the end you answer your research questions. So data preparation. First, what is really important is to make a text file. So if you have your interview, then it will be your transcript, but if you have your observation, it can also be a description. Be guided by your research question and the literature. Make sure that you have a link with the data source. So, for example, use time codes from your audio recording. Make your data preparation, especially transcripts, make them soon after collecting the data. Don't wait for more than a week, because there will be, your memory of certain details, of gestures, expressions from your participants, they will have been reduced during time. What is important is that you transcribe without reduction, exact phrasing. So if people in natural conversation, they use a lot of half sentences, unfinished sentences. Your natural reaction would then be to make it while you're typing, to make it into typed type of text, which is a full sentence, and where there is structure. Don't do that. Match the exact phrasing. Don't do interpretation yet. So if you already have ideas on interpretation, keep separate notes on that and add non-verbal information, such as facial expressions, pauses, actions, ha-has, these kind of things. In your data preparation, you can select relevant material. Again, this is guided by research, and be aware of a reduction or selection that might be part of your preparation and in the field notes that you've made. Because if you're just working from field notes and not from recordings, already you have been selective in what you've noted on or not. So it could be that you don't need a full transcript. Sometimes you just have too much material to make full transcripts. I think every 5 minutes of interview will take you half an hour to transcribe. And also sometimes you have an introduction or a bridging part where you tell more about the project, or there are sidelines discussed during an interview that are not really relevant to the outcome. Then it can be that you don't need to make a full transcript, but use arguments. If you have a very focused research question, of course selection is easier, but if you have a broad exploratory research question, then yeah, you need to include more relevant information. Do not erase irrelevant information, but if you have more relevant stuff, highlight that. So don't leave out things straight away. The second part is organizing and structuring your data. This is called labeling or coding. You have units in there and you assign a label to them. Now the first step, there's a very good example of research into what is a good primary school teacher in the book, and you start with open coding, assigning labels to the units and just a label describing what is in the text. And it could be that there's more one label per unit if there is more information in a unit. So the first step is to make units of text, see what is a coherent unit of data, assign the labels. Very important, be descriptive, no interpretation yet. The second step is, well, after the open coding, is then you are going a little bit into the interpretation, is the actual coding. That is where you organize and group the labels. So if you have, in the example of the teacher, things about the way a teacher acts, or things about the way a teacher looks, then you group them under similar labels. So this is actual coding. Organization and grouping of labels, and by putting in structures and patterns, you add meaning to the data. This is an iterative process. As you learn stuff, you might go back and do new types of grouping. It could lead to the idea that you need additional data, that there's new questions that you have to ask, things that you have not asked yet, and that you find out, oh, I need to know more about it. Now, these things. The next step is actually going a step further, is creating a hierarchy in the groups or categories that you've identified, which is called selective coding. And here you have to really keep your research questions in mind and your research aim, because if you are investigating, for example, this teacher stuff, because you are building a theory of what is classroom management about, or if you're doing this research to change the situation in a specific school, then there are different things to focus on, but also your own perspective. A product designer will have a different perspective than an organization consultant, so as such will create a different hierarchy in the categories of labels that are in there. Then you move on to the answers to your research questions. When you're talking about descriptive research, when you are trying to describe the situation, then you're looking for what are the key themes of the stuff that is going on here. And one of the things that you're working towards in your conclusions is the importance. That can be based on frequencies, but it can also be based on other things that happened. You're often then talking about processes and hierarchies, and it's very important to visualize your findings. When you're talking about exploratory research, then your conclusions will be in the shape of key connections and relations, and they can well be done by showing a network analysis. It's often very good to graphically represent it again, visualize, or by building a model, and that can be more in an abstract sense, but that you show a logical whole of how different parts are connected and use the data as a building material. That is important, that you go to a framework of a conclusion, and not just say, okay, this is our conclusion, right? That you have one conclusion. Go through different aspects and how they are connected. I think that's it. Yes. These are the steps. Follow the steps in order to have a good qualitative research. What is then good quality in that research? That's the topic of the next video. Thanks for watching. Any feedback is welcome, and hope it helps.